Hello, and welcome to another episode of Gaming and Education. As I was thinking of another piece to talk about, I wanted to talk about how you could turn your classroom into a game. This is a small intro to tomorrow. This is a small intro to next week's podcast with Melissa Pielakowski, who will talk about 10 games she actually implements in the classrooms. But a lot of people ask, well, what can I do to just make my classroom more game like easily? And as I've always said, the best way is to actually make your class gaming yourself. And really, if you go back to my first episode about drive, those three ideas of agency, mastery, and purpose, those are the best ways you can make your classroom a game. And I wanted to go into that more depth about how using agency, mastery, and purpose, you can make your class more game like very easily, and then really engage the students in the learning process. The first one we'll talk about is agency. If you want to get your students to really feel like the class is game like, you have to give them agency, choice in the class. They have to do choice in the class. It is their class. Empower them. They're not just being told to do things. They have the choice to choose what they want to do. So, if you want to go way there, you could give them lists of ideas of what they can do in class, different options of how the class can go. Maybe that's station learning. Maybe it's a grid, like a bingo grid, and they could choose different activities on it for what to do. If it is a presentation, they can choose how they want to present on it. They don't have to be doing it a certain way with a certain program. In the younger grades, it could be in the younger grades, it could be different stations that they go to, or maybe they learn a certain way here. This is for auditory learners. This way of learning it is much for people who like to read or engage. This one's for discussions. That is a great way of agency. They get choice. Another way is let them solve problems in the class, problems where multiple ways could be the right solution to something. So give them really challenging math problems and don't say, here's how you solve it. Just let them try to solve it their own way. That's agency. They get choice. This really engages their brain. They're not being told what to do and they're figuring things out. It's critical thinking. And they re- they really have a better time and students better understand how to and let students solve the problems their own way without any rules of how they should do it. Now, if they get it wrong, of course correct them to better ways or easier ways to do it, but don't start with here's how you do it. Do not start with the process that gets to a solution. Give them problems at the end and let them figure out and muddle through how to solve things. And then if they get stuck, help them a little bit, but always start with the here's the end. Let's just make it happen. How do we get there? Uh, the other way is just start with a bunch of problems. Never start with here's a process. Always start with here's what we're trying to solve. How would you do it? Okay, you can't solve it that way. Here's some other ideas how maybe you want to solve it, and then get there. Now, this doesn't mean always go way hard problems, but always just start your lessons with that. Here's a goal. Here's what we want to do. And I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I want you to figure it out. And when you can't, I'm here to help you. That is agency. Students really, really love this. One of the best examples I love is Readers and Writers Workshop. It is a method of doing reading and writing, and I just love it. But it really focuses on this all the time. In the readers workshop, they read novels in book groups as they keep going up, and they even in the younger grades they just talk to each other about books. But there is no main conclusions they're supposed to draw. There is no right answer for what they should gain from this book. They think for themselves, what should they get out of this reading? And then sure, the teacher might provide some ideas or helpful ways for them to get what should be out of the book, but it doesn't say you should be learning this from this book or this. In fact, they also get to choose what books they read in readers workshop. There is no we are all going to read this book. It is all about students reading what they want to read, because what's important is reading, not being told what to read. So if you want to empower reading, yeah, give them agency. Get them to choose how they want to read. Get them to choose what they're reading about and how they want to interpret what they read. The same thing is for Writers Workshop. It does great lessons in writing. And in the end, I've seen students write so much more than in other methods. And the reason why is students have agency in the writing process in the Writers Workshop. They are told to just write for 15, 30, 40 minutes at a time. And as they just write for 30 minutes at a time, doesn't matter what they're writing about. Maybe it has a small theme or purpose. Maybe this is narrative writing and this is uh, investigative writing and this is personal and this is instructional writing. But other than that, they get to write about what they want to do, how they want to talk about themselves, what they want to do for their instructional writing. It is theirs to empower them. And yes, every time they will learn rules to improve their writing, and they are told repeatedly following mastery to go back and do their writing again. But the agency is there that they're writing what they want. They are told to write for a certain amount of time, so they do. And they have the control of what they write about. That is agency. They have control over it. And students love this. The third is if you want to do in another type of class, take a history class, for example. Agency works really well if you take my microscoping history idea, and you can look at my podcast of With Microscope with Ben Robbins, look at my little PowerPoints on microscope. It doesn't tell you what you need to learn about history. It just says, here's a time period, here's a genre we're looking at. Maybe it's the Roman Empire, maybe it is the Constitution, maybe it is World War I, maybe it is medieval times. Here's the history. Go learn about it yourself. What you want to learn about. You work with a group, you all learn about it. Nobody says you have to learn certain things about it. Now, sure, while you're doing this, maybe the teacher will guide you that you might want to look at this stuff because it's important and useful, but there is no you have to learn these things. Instead of microscoping history, it is students are learning what they want to learn about, what they find interesting. And if you guide them right, most likely they are going to wind up in the same places that they should. Other examples, which you'll hear even actually next week with Melissa Pielakowski, are mystery boxes for history or language arts or whatever. You just put in clues in a box and let them figure out what all these objects have to do with each other. Let them solve the mystery of what does all this have to do with each other? What are we learning about? Notice by doing that, they're really critical thinking about it. They want to know more about it. They want to figure it out, but the conclusions are their own. No one has told them it means this. It has to mean this. This means that the students can figure out for themselves what they think is going on, and then the teacher helps them really get it in the end so they understand it. But that initial agency is so important that they're figuring it out. Another example I use is a man, Ryan O'Donnell. He does picture mysteries. He'll take a scene of history in a picture and he'll only show them a piece of it. And then the students will have to, from that little quadrant of it, try to figure out what's going on in the picture. And then he'll open a second quadrant and see, well, now that you have two quadrants, what's now going on in the picture? And then he'll eventually open up the whole picture, and then students will go, oh, that's what you're talking about. Okay, I get it now. This is what was going on. But even though it took them all these different ways of getting it by thinking about the picture in different ways by just little scenes, that agency is super important to engaging students in learning. And another great example in a history class are document-based questions. Just give them documents and let them come to their own conclusions about it. Give them documents of two sides, just give them documents in general, pictures, items, writings from the time period. Let them figure out what's going on. Don't tell them this is what happened. A great example I always remember is the Cold War. I had to do a document-based question for my AP exam on the Cold War, and there were just a bunch of documents about nuclear war, and it said, so is the US a nuclear power that is threatening, or is it a force for good? And then we had to just look at all the documents and say, well, this document kind of shows it like this, but this document shows it like this. And I agree with this document more than this one. Here's why. And suddenly you have all this agency. You're really wanting to know about it. You really want to talk about it because it's up to you as a student to make your own conclusions. Nobody is telling you the conclusions you have to make. And now I know we always feel we have to give them conclusions, we have to make it a certain way, but we don't have to. We can just have students do it and then course correct them and advise them afterwards. And that way of learning, that just switching the whole model from procedure to success to problem, figure it out, some procedure, figure it out, makes sense, changes everything because now students have agency. In a science class, really making students feel like scientists in their class. Let them figure things out on their own. They have hypotheses and experiments. Let students experiment for themselves. See if their answers come out right. What do they infer from this? Let them be the ones who are making experiments instead of telling them how things should happen. Also, you could do this in math class as well. One of the best examples is give them, as I've said before, super hard math problems. And when you give them a super hard math problem, don't tell them how to solve it. Let them just figure it out. And yeah, they're not going to all the time, but always start with those ending problems and let them figure it out. That's agency. And when they struggle, when they're having trouble, then you help them. So agency, really easy to add to your games. Just always think of the end, make them challenging them, make them have their choices, give them options. Agency is wonderful. The second is mastery. And mastery, once again, I've said, is all about letting students fail, struggle, get things wrong, try again. How you can implement this in your class, Giving them multiple tries for tests and quizzes is very good. Now, many of you are going to say, I can't give them multiple tries for tests and quizzes. I don't have the time to grade all that. And you're right. You don't, and you're right. You do not have the time to grade all that if you really are focusing on telling everybody what step they got wrong and why they got it wrong. Instead, if you want to mastery based learning, let them figure it out themselves. I saw this great lesson where a teacher would just have students turn a math test and then they just say, wrong, 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 do it again. And then students have to figure out why they got those problems wrong, work out through things. They know they got it wrong, but then they have to use their mastery to figure out why. And then the teacher will look at it again, see less wrong, go wrong, wrong, wrong. Here, do those ones again. And then eventually the students got what they were doing wrong because they had to do it over and over and over again. And the teacher didn't have to grade much because they just looked at the answer, said wrong, 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 solve those again. And that's really easy. It's much harder when we say things in our, I've seen this a billion times, when a student is doing badly or struggling on, say, an essay or writing prompt, and we have to keep telling them, here, you did this wrong 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 here, here's why, here's why, here's why, here's why, and red mark the entire thing over and over horribly, then it takes us so much time. Instead, we should be looking at it and say, hey, look, it needs to be like this, yours isn't, do it again. It should look like this. It should have these parts of it. It's wrong. Do it again. And let them keep on doing it over and over. Let them get frustrated. Let them get it wrong. Let them ask you, what did I do wrong? And then when they ask, what did I do wrong? You tell them what they did, and then they can go. But don't just keep writing everything, because half the time, I mean, the truth is the students don't read their comments. One of my rules is if it's the final essay of theirs, if it is the final assignment, you should not have to write on it everything they did wrong and why. They should know by then what they still did wrong because you've helped them mastery through that point. Another example is John Carepo's workout method of writing. You keep having them do draft after draft after draft. Every single step, they're improving, improving. And it's actually really interesting, this method of it. And I would look up John Carepo's kind of workout method of writing. The idea is you shouldn't have even students write a full essay till about 20 weeks into class. So, like your second semester. In fact, week 1 should just be about research. Up to week 10 should just be about research, but it gets harder every week they're researching. That's the mastery part of it. Every week they have to learn how to write about research more. They have to learn how to understand things about research more. Then your next 10 weeks are how to write a thesis. And it should be, here's how you write a thesis step 1. Here's how you write a thesis step 2. But every week gets harder and harder to do. And then by the end, they really understand how to write essays. And then boom, the last half of the class, they're writing amazing essays all the time because they've had to do this mastery concept of writing essays. And John Carepo will be on the show, by the way, in a few weeks. When you hear that episode, listen in. This workout method of writing is just awesome. But you could apply it to everything right here. It is about mastery, that they can't just learn how to do it. They have to struggle. They have to get it wrong. They have to fail. My favorite YouTube video in the world is Extra Credits Fail Faster. Watch it to understand how important failure is, and learning to get things wrong, and learning that that's okay, and learning from your mistakes. And that is the best way to do it in mastery. Just keep on making it harder for them. Always make it more challenging for students. Always make sure there is more to do. Yes, eventually their students will have to finish essays. They will have to complete work, but make it that they've had to work for that. They've had to finish that. And then even remind them that even after they finish things, you could still always improve things. I mean, take, for example, myself right now. I am always improving this podcast, trying to make it better, trying to improve how I do this. The goal is we are constantly improving ourselves. And to do that, we have to have a mastery mindset. We need to teach students that there isn't just a way to get 100%. There is, you start at 0 and you keep on going up. That's another rule I will say that I think is great. I once had a teacher say to me, you know what I always do? I start my students with an A. And then after they get there, and if they can keep that A, that's great. And I hate that method now. I realize, no, all students start with a 0. You all start with 0 points. You're all failing. You're all doing awful right now. You have to earn yourself to get better. Everything you do makes you better in this class. Everything you do raises you up. And that's mastery right there. Always start from the bottom, and you have to keep working, 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 working. And that method changes things in students. That teaches them that it's okay to get things wrong. It's okay to fail, because by doing so, you'll learn from it, but always allow them chances to keep doing things over. Think in your own jobs as teachers, think in your own everything. You don't get it right the first time. You experiment with a lesson, try a lesson, fail at it, and then you try it again and make it better and it gets better. We need to teach that to students, and that's mastery. So, my advice to all of you is keep on trying to do mastery in your classes. Let students get things wrong, let students do things over and over again, and definitely try my method one of these days of give them quizzes and then just say, wrong, 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 do it again. And they'll go, why? What do I do? Just solve the ones you got wrong. You got this right. Try that. Mastery, great in classes. Finally, purpose. That is one of the most important things there is. And we really need to work with students on trying to figure out why they do things in class, why they do almost everything in class. And one of the best examples I think is make students the owners of their material. So to go to the readers and writers example again, they emphasize from grade 1 on, when they're doing their readers workshop, they say, we are readers. And the students are proud to be readers because they are empowered to be readers because they say, we are all readers. We can all read. We all want to read. That's what being a reader is. Same with writers. We are all writers. They make it a motto. And everybody says, we are writers. We all keep writing. We love to write. My daughter's in kindergarten and she did this writer's workshop. And she came back to school one of the days and just said, I'm a writer. And I was like, thumbs up. Yes, you are. So that is a great way, but we can apply that to all subjects as well. Make students feel that they are these things. If you are a math teacher, make students feel like they are mathematicians and let them actually have to solve problems like a mathematician does. A PhD in math doesn't do multiplication 20 times in a row of the same type of problem. A math multiplication PhD is trying to figure out, why does multiplication work this way? How can I solve this problem? Get them to feel that way, that they're investigating problems all the time. A scientist doesn't say, well, obviously this should work this way because I've learned chemistry and it works. No, they're solving science problems. And you should do the same thing with your students, even if it's at a small level. Let them always feel like they're solving problems. In history, let them feel like they are paleontologists. In history, let them feel like they are sociologists. They are always these people studying history as real studiers of history. And a real PhD in history doesn't look on Wikipedia and say, oh, that's the answer. No, they solve problems. They solve things that are unanswered. And yes, there might be answers out there and students don't know it yet. So let students feel like they have to go discover the answers for themselves. That is what it means to give purpose. So always make them feel like they can discover things for themselves. And another rule with this is, if it's hard to do, if it is hard to make it interesting, that's where that role playing and pretend games come in the classroom. Make it something made up that they have to do to solve it so that they are engaged in it. Maybe it is quests they are doing to solve things because it's boring to solve it regularly. So it's a quest to do it. And there's different stages of the quest, or there's monsters they have to fight to overcome. And you can only overcome them with math problems or science problems or language arts problems. There are just problems they have to solve. Or another example is you'll hear an interview with another example you hear in an interview. Another example you hear in an interview about LARPing is the Danish LARP school, where yes, they are actually pretending to be crime scene investigators and they have to use science and math to solve crimes. That's great, powerful stuff because they are pretending to be these characters. And they're doing basic science and math for it, but just give them that pretend if you cannot engage them normally. Now, I still always say, if you can engage them, empower them to be writers and readers and make them feel that they are these things inside, that they are always some real job and everything they're doing is training for that job. But if you can't, make it up. Great examples are, when I was a student teacher, my teacher did history scene investigation, and all the students in class were history detectives. They'd put up a picture, they'd give some objects, and then they'd have to figure out what's going on in this thing. Like they just got time transported there. The students loved it because they had to figure out what's going on here. We have no clue. We got to figure it out. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Let's talk about this. How does that connect to that? Oh, look, there's this, then that. Wonderful idea. Math problems with real life consequences is another purpose. All right. So instead of it's students trying to get on a school bus, it's slices of, it's all those word problems, but make them actually important to students. I've seen things like, how many jugs would it take to fill up the Eiffel Tower? Let them figure these things out because maybe they want to spray a hose from the Eiffel Tower and make a giant water slide. Just give them purpose. And it doesn't always have to make sense, but just purpose in what they do. Let them solve real world dilemmas. A great idea is project-based learning. And if you really want to go into that, I definitely recommend looking up the project-based learning. The BIE is a great resource for that. And have them research their own projects, have them find their own knowledge, have them go into kind of 20% time project-based learning and purpose-based learning. And when I say 20% time, it is they're researching their own ideas, what they want to study, what they want to do, how they want to solve the world. Let them solve it for themselves because that gives them purpose and that's how they want to learn. So, those three things I highly recommend all the time. Give them the ability to choose what they want to do, give them the ability to fail over and over and keep on improving step by step, growing into mastery, knowing it's going to get better, but always making it challenging, and purpose, giving them some reason in their soul, in their body that they want to do what they're doing. And if you can't, as I said, if there's not a real way to do that, sometimes in some subjects, I know is like you have to do vocabulary and just do it. Then when you just have to do it, make it up, make it fun. That's when next week there are Games in the Classroom by Melissa Pielikowski. I recommend you look at. Check out those games. Those are great ways to just make the boring sometimes fun and engaging because we, in the end goal, want them to have purpose. Now your classroom, if you follow these things, it's a game. And please, if you do this, please tweet it out to me that you've done it, KKibTeach. Please email me that you've done it at kkibrick. Please email me that you've done it at keenan.kibrick@gmail.com. Please let me know you are doing these type of ideas. I'd love to see how you implement purpose, mastery, and agency in the classroom because there are so many ways to, and I just want to hear about them. Or you can post it on my Immersive Imaginative Education Google Plus group. Any of these ways, I want to hear about it because I'd love to know how you really make your classroom a game. And let's all see the games we have. All right, that's it. Have a great week and keep on gaming.